But
why do you go to war if the cost is casualties and thousands of American lives, and you end up with more terrorists than you started with?
Well, because it's not at the end of the war yet. Because at this point, we're engaging the enemy. They're coming to the sound of our guns. We're fighting. They're rallying their side. We're trying to rally ours.
Recruitment.
Of course, of recruitment. I mean, you get more troops as the war progresses, and at some point you hope that you overwhelm them. In this case, a combination of ideas and struggle over a generation. But you can't measure the success of a war by stopping in the first few moments of it and say there's more of the enemy. There were more.
We were fighting the Germans in World War II, and every time we killed a German, 10 appeared out of nowhere to join the German movement. We'd have lost.
Take that analogy.
We would have lost.
When France and Britain declared war on Germany in 1939, there were no Nazis in France. By 1940, there were 1 million Nazi soldiers in France. Of course, the Nazis came to the sound of the gun. Eventually, we beat the Nazis. So it's not
came from Germany.
Right.
But these people are coming from all over the world to join the cause of jihadism.
Of course.
You're treating it like an ethnic group. It's people from all over the Islamic world are joining the jihadist movement.
They're coming from Saudi Arabia. Some of them coming from England.
Right. Okay, let me go around.
I don't know what Tony's talking about. We were told that this war would last just a few weeks. Rumsfeld wouldn't plan for after the war. We were just going to go in there. A Jeffersonian democracy was going to emerge in Iraq. It was going to be a model for the whole Middle East. It would put pressure on the mullahs in Iran, and the moderates would take over there, which they would defund Hezbollah. That's what we were told. And now we're being told that, oh, of course, we're in the middle of the war now, and they respond to the sounds of the guns. What is that? Of course Afghanistan was the right thing to do, and the world was behind us. When we went into Iraq, we did it on false pretenses. This president misled us into a war, and it was a huge gamble, and he has lost, and the American people have lost. And the 2,700 men and women who have died there have lost, and their families have lost, and the 20,000 have been wounded have lost. And how dare you say this is just a complete re-spin of what was said before we went in there, and I resent it.
Well, look, Al, you should have been reading my columns, and then you'd understand things a little bit better. I wrote a column before the war in September.
I think I understand things perfectly well, Tony. I think it's you that don't understand things. And
Alan,
don't be patronizing like that,
okay? You told me you
okay?
didn't understand what I was saying, so I was trying to explain it to you, Alan. If you'd like to.
No, that's okay. Try to explain it to me, because I'm a little thick here,
okay.
Tony. Because didn't you say didn't the president say that this is going to be over very soon? Weren't we going to be treated like liberators? Weren't we going to be greeted with sweets and flowers?
Let me talk for a second, Alan. I wrote a column in September of 2002 entitled "Measureless Peril," and I was quoting Henry Kissinger on why we were going to go into Iraq next spring, which we did. And it was to make a larger point. It wasn't exactly the argument Bush was making, because I didn't think that was the full argument, and I still don't think it was. We have to go in and make a presence in Iraq, in the Middle East, and build from there. I expected, and I wrote, and I described to my readers that there was going to be all kinds of danger, a lot of very powerful reaction to it, but it was going to be worth it. I still believe it's worth it, because we have to engage them and defeat their spirit. And by the way, this report, the national estimate here,
intelligence estimate, NIE. Let me explain that to you, Tony. It's called the National Intelligence Estimate.
If we beat them in Iraq, they will be dispirited. Now, that's the part of the quote that was not leaked to the New York Times, because the New York Times cherry-picked the quote.
Oh, well, speaking of cherry-picking, are you accusing the New York Times of cherry-picking and not accusing the Bush administration of cherry-picking? How about Dick Cheney leading into the war, saying that there was no doubt? Hey, come on. Let me explain something to you, Tony.
Problem here. I'll be right back with that.
Yeah, let's talk about cherry-picking, Tony. You wrote this, I assume. This is the Washington Times editorial on this piece. Mr. Clinton also attacked the Bush administration for demoting Mr. Clark. The man himself, as the man himself has written in the book, no less, Mr. Clark demoted himself, and then in quotes, to the apparent surprise of then National Security Advisor Condi Rice. Actually, he was demoted immediately. He didn't demote himself until after 9/11, which you don't put in here. He was demoted in that he was taken out of the Principals Committee, and you know that. And you're misleading your readers deliberately
Alan,
by saying this, Tony. No, let me
I'm glad
explain
you're
to
a
you,
devoted
Tony.
reader,
Let me
you
explain
used
what
to
you
have
did.
a lighter touch.
Oh, man.
Let me explain what you did here, Tony. He was demoted immediately. He came to Condi Rice and gave her the plan to put boots on the ground in Afghanistan, and they didn't address that plan. The Bush administration didn't look at al-Qaeda until 9/11. And you know...
Alan, you are so deep into the roots of these thoughts. You're at the capillary to the capillary, and who said what when. We're quoting him from his own book.
No. You
You've got another
yourself are
source on that.
cherry-picking,
Don't
Tony,
you realize
and
how far
deliberately
away from
misleading.
reality you're drifting, Alan?
I'm not drifting. I'm specifically
You're
talking
deep
about a
in
piece
there, my
that you
friend.
wrote.
You know,
And you
both you
deliberately
guys. Both you guys.
Al Franken, your view of that comment.
Well, I don't know if he's dumb as a doorpost. I know. I have the sense that he's racist. The macaca explanation doesn't make any sense. It's demeaning. Whatever it was cruel. Because he was
Well,
singling
then listen
out...
to that, Al. The other thing that he said about the macaca, in the macaca film, what did he mean when he said, "Welcome to America" and
Exactly.
the real Virginia? What
Exactly.
did he mean by that?
He meant you're of dark skin and look Indian, which he was of Indian extraction. He was extracted from an Indian, but he grew up in Virginia. He was born in Virginia. And it's clear, and the explanation is ridiculous. What is macaca is obvious. If he made it up, it has the word caca in it. I don't call Tony blankly makuku, which means crazy
Thank you.
Brit
Appreciate
in
that.
Yiddish.
Did you know that one?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's Yiddish
We're all learning
for
bad
crazy
words here.
Brit.
Thank
Crazy
you.
Brit.
More time for all you next time. I wish you had more time.